allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, just in time.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Here.
Let's hope that 2016 ends up a lot better than it's starting. Gee, the stock market.
There you go. Gotta get these Chinese to
Realize I
stabilize.
can't retire now for another 20 years.
The stock market is a shell game.
Mm.
You know, I'm voting for Bernie Sanders.
Oh,
Stock
dear.
market only goes down temporarily, it goes up permanently. You don't believe me, look at any chart,
Good
Yeah.
point.
Good philosophy.
Yeah.
that's a fact.
Yeah, and you'd be hard pressed to argue that and win it too, against it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a matter of take the long view.
So I will open the floor for privilege of the floor if anyone wants to speak. I received minutes from our last meeting.
Looks okay to me, I make a motion we approve.
Second. Right. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Treasurer's report, page 10.
Yeah. We're starting out with the income statement for 3 months, which is a quarter of the way through the year, so you can kind of add our revenues and expenses and figure for about a quarter of what we had budgeted. You can see that our year-to-date revenues are $310,000. We have the extra income in there from the grant from New York State Microgrid that we had budgeted for, so that kind of, if it weren't for that, we'd probably be pretty close to being our 25% of our revenues year-to-date. You can see that the current month and the previous months have been a little over $100,000 in revenues a month, so pretty consistent there. Expenses, nothing looks out of line there at all. Total expenses, $257,000, which is just about a quarter of what we had budgeted. Some things were a little over, some were a little less. And again, you had the microgrid expenses that are in there that are offset by the revenues up above. We have a net income over expenditures of $52,899 for the first quarter of the year. And then Lyle always breaks out for us, we're doing with our various expense categories. The ag program, that is at $40,000, which again is right around a quarter of what our budget is for that, so we're doing okay there. So we spent the money. Marketing program, we spent $78,000 there. You can see where that's been broken out. And on the manufacturing program, we haven't spent much money there yet, but that'll be coming later on in the year. Balance sheet, as of December 31st, shows we are in pretty good shape. We've got over $3 million in cash, plus we have money, $607,000 in our revolving loan fund savings account. Outstanding loans receivable, $1,585,000. Total assets, $4,773,000. We don't have much for expenses. Our liabilities. Our liabilities are primarily our deferred revenues from the Jefferson County, our grant from Jefferson County, giving us the money and we're taking it into income each month. So you can see our total capital, total liabilities, $247,000, and our capital is $4.5 million. Our age receivables are actually our loans receivable. receipts, I reviewed the receipts and disbursements, nothing out of line in either of those. Don't have much for payables at this point. Check registers, disbursements, I went through that, like part of that is payroll. And then that's it.
Any questions on the treasurer's report? Can I entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries, thank you. The holidays and everything, I don't think we have any committee reports.
Right.
Unfinished business? Nothing?
No, I just might add that a howdy-do to Mr. Russell, who's joined us now for the first time in the new year.
Howdy-do.
Thank you.
I noticed he's sober this morning, so I think it's, likely we'll have a good year ahead. Yesterday, we went down to Mr. Heary's office and collected some of the remaining inactive files, which, should be here so we can kind of keep track of them. The active files have been transferred over to Joe and his crew, and I think the transition is well underway and no problem so far.
That's right.
He's easy to deal with, so we'll welcome him. The other note I would make this morning, Mr. Chairman, is that I guess congratulations are in order for Board Member Scott Gray, who was appointed the chair of the Board of Legislators at a meeting the other night, which I attended, and so we will probably end up having a couple of replacement folks for this board as we look for the year ahead. So.
Good. That's our unfinished, our new business, our counselor, boy, we wrapped it all right in one. How about a marketing update? Marshall, what do we have?
I've got actually three things that I'd like to talk to you about. One, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown on our analytics from the web. Then I want to talk about a targeted European marketing program that we're looking to partner with Lewis County and hire an outside consultant, Euromarket Development Services, to help with the targeted outreach for Europe. And then third, I would like to talk about this will be quick, but a grant through National Grid to update our Bridge to US Biz landing page, where Canadian people can access our current website to make this one look sort of seamless. But to start, Google says that our website visits were down in December compared to November. I guess it's not a huge surprise for December. Our website, this might shock you, is not the type of website that people surf when they're goofing off at work. So we're down about 20% there. Users about the same. Page views were down 17%. We were up on the pages per session by 4 points. And we're up 11 points on the session duration. We're back up over a minute, so that's good news. And we're at 2.7 pages per visit. And then some of our big traffic drivers, our top 5 are direct URL searches, where they put our JCIDA or Grow with Jefferson County right into their URL. And then Google search is number 2, Channel 7 is number 3 with their extended audience network, Time Warner, and then Watertown Daily Times. And then interestingly enough, our 6th is the Jefferson County website. We have a little tab on the far right economic development, you can click that, and it'll take us to our website. But I want to talk mostly about this targeted European marketing program that we've been talking for a while about leveraging our current assets here in Jefferson County. You know, manufacturing German, European companies, as well as adding with added value with agriculture and manufacturing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the executive summary, and I'm going to hand it each to you. I can't stand reading something and then having everybody, you know, basically I'm just like reading to you. So if anybody has any questions while I'm going, just stop me. The project description on this is the regional goals established in Jefferson County's 2012 Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, the SEDS program, and the 2012 Lewis County SEDS include growing the number of regional businesses and increasing employment opportunities. The proposed European Economic Development Partnership will focus on industries and growth business sectors that are comparable with Jefferson County, Jefferson Lewis region, and will explore potential European foreign direct investment opportunities. This proposal advances the broader global North Country initiative of the North Country Regional Economic Development Council and encourage greater foreign direct investment in the region. The program would entail direct outreach to qualified companies identified through targeted industry research. This would be undertaken in partnership between Jefferson County, Lewis County, and Euromarket Development Services. The program will focus on two general areas: agriculturally related value-added processing with an emphasis on dairy, and manufacturing in areas that offer the best potential based on local attributes. Agriculture is a key industry to both counties, and any foreign direct investment in a processing facility would either county would rely on producers throughout the region for its supply chain. Existing regional businesses would be used to identify and make third-party endorsement contact with suppliers and customers when possible. A parallel program to identify companies in Europe who would be good prospects would be undertaken, and this would involve considerable research that would result in target lists and potential prospects. Contact would be made on behalf of Jefferson County and Lewis County using these lists. The counties of Jefferson and Lewis have a history of working together in workforce development. Both are served by the Jefferson-Lewis Workforce Development Board and Jefferson-Lewis BOCES. The economic development agencies from both counties collaborated on an educational video to promote interest in manufacturing and trade skills. They partnered together in offering occupational health and safety training and in hosting an annual National Manufacturing Day event. They also present 2 of 3 counties involved in the Drum Country Business regional marketing effort, as this proposal builds on that initiative in a more targeted manner, you know, in that it's manufacturing, ag, and of course anything else that you know, as they're meeting with people that comes along. I mean, we're not saying no to any potential people that are looking to make FDI here. For us and Lewis County, this proposal advances the broader global North Country initiative of the North Country Regional Economic Development Council to encourage greater FDI in the region. The program goal is to identify at least 25 potential international leads for Jefferson County. I mean, these are real leads with companies that are planning on making investments in the US and in Canada. Targeted markets program activities would focus on Western Europe with a primary focus on European Union members and Scandinavian countries. Euromarket program implementation. Okay, so this is what they're going to be doing. The marketing program would utilize SEDS data, conclusions, and recommendations as a basis. It would tactically capitalize on Jefferson County's strength and target growth areas compatible with Jefferson County. European companies and relevant association and specific industry sectors, and where possible, specific product areas would be targeted. Target companies would be identified, qualified, and evaluated working closely with the LDC. We would be the point agency on this. This would result in listed primary and secondary target firms, and including appropriate contact persons. Targeted corporate individuals would be first contacted as necessary in native language. The objective would be to begin building a relationship with the appropriate JCLDC contact, and EDS would closely support this interaction in an invisible manner. The cornerstone of the program would be direct communication with persons at companies and databases created solely for this purpose. These databases would be built by EDS working with JCLDC. Preset marketing and industry segmentation screens would be used initially to qualify companies and associations. If travel is possible for JCLDC representatives, potential relevant trade fairs would be identified, and meetings with qualified companies will be set prior to these events. In the event that the international travel is not possible, business in Jefferson County will be scheduled as opportunities arise. Now, I'd love to go to Germany, to the Hanover show, probably not gonna happen here, but, so our goal with the identifying of the companies would be to, the goal really would be to get them here. So, direct marketing,
First class.
including email, telephone contact, conference calls, video conferencing would be used. Lead qualification, follow-up with leads, coordination, tracking, reporting, and database management would be an integral part of this program. EDS would initiate and coordinate correspondence, contacts, qualification activities in partnership with the LDC. All correspondence would be directed at generating responses and include a brief project specification form for qualification purposes. Online research and telephone contact would be employed to qualify respondent companies and obtain information on U.S. expansion plans and company data. EDS would coordinate face-to-face meetings and handle scheduling of preset meetings. JCLDC would be continually informed of program progress, including prospect company profiles and U.S. investment plans based on EDS research. When trade fair meetings are set, EDS would create a meeting matrix for LDC representatives and provide brief reference company overviews prior to meetings. EDS staff would accompany JCLDC representatives if appropriate. That'll be appropriate. Euro market, so then the program cost, Euro market development services will charge a fee of $6,000 per month plus out-of-pocket costs, estimated at $500 per month. Travel, major mail and email campaigns, and other non-recurring costs we billed separately without markup as they occur. Once JCLDC and EDS have agreed on the marketing program, EDS will prepare a letter of agreement for review and signatures by both parties. The program will begin on a 6-month trial basis to evaluate interest in the region. Now, this you know, as we talked about, okay, how are we going to do? You know, we've talked about as I mentioned before, leveraging our current assets in the county and in Lewis County. And in talking to Joe Russo, this program would qualify for a grant, but it has to be regional. That's how kind of Lewis County got involved. Now we're working with them, and it's still kind of tentative on how they're going to participate, but they add a lot in terms of agriculture assets to the region, which we can really use. I mean, it doubles the amount of dairy that we can show for instance, for a processing plant. They have craft, which of course everybody recognizes as a world leader, you know, the world's largest cream cheese plant in the world. And then again, with the, like, for instance, Germany, you know, one of the principals of this company, she is German and, you know, obviously speaks the language. When we were telling her about the German companies that we have here, she's like, oh, you know, wow. I mean, I didn't realize that Norbrems was in Watertown, New York, and Roth Industries. I mean, those are big companies. I have references for Euromarket, and they're outstanding. Anyway, they've been working with the city of Akron, Ohio, since 2005, the state of Ohio since 1995, Public Service Electric and Gas since 1995, New Jersey, Niagara Mohawk since 1999, New York State Electric and Gas since 1986, and the Savannah Economic Development Authority since 1986. We've looked, when we're starting to talk about this program, we looked at some of the ones like a Gruber Phillips and ROI, you know, maybe more well-known and larger firms, and to work with on this project. And of course, didn't really get a whole lot of response, and you know, they all come up with an excuse. Well, Gruber Phillips, for instance, working with New York State, and ROI, and then another one they were just like, no, you know, we're not going to work at the county level. As we're talking to Joe Russo at National Grid, he said, you really need to talk to the Ag News. They're pros at it, and could be a good fit. And as we start talking to them more and more, we realized that they were a good fit, to the point where, you know, they were you know, they were kind of hesitant at first to work with us. They had some issues about travel, and they you know, right up front, you know, they said, you know, we're just not really sure.
Not their travel, they were concerned about
travel.
here.
If we get a good lead, they were concerned that there's gonna be an overnight stay on the flight to get here. Meaning, so they get here in the afternoon, and then they can't get a flight up to Watertown International or Syracuse. So, we talked to some of our local German companies and said, hey, when leadership comes to visit, is it a big problem to get them here? And they said no, and you can do it without getting an overnight stay. They also said that international flights into, say, Quebec, if we're targeting companies that might have, thoughts about investment in Canada and then in the U.S., specifically New York, they might decide Canada works. So we don't want them to fly to Canada and then drive through Canada and be like, oh, okay, look at all this space, so, but we were able to quell those fears with them. And so, as I said, the National Grid, the grant side of it, that will cover half of it. And then we're still working on how Lewis County is gonna participate. We wanted this to be our program. But in order to get the grant, we needed it to be regional in scope. And then partnering with Lewis County, yes, we want the project to be here, but depending on the level of involvement with Lewis County, they're gonna support the project in any way. We don't know how they're gonna support it from a financial perspective, if at all, depending. We've talked about that in a lot of different ways, but there won't be any change to the budget.
Eric wants to, he just needs to go back to his board.
Eric wants to do it. He wants to be a big part of it, but
They're in a better position than we are, county budget-wise.
might be.
Yeah.
So, no change in budget for marketing, so this is just something that we're real excited about. I'm gonna hand out the executive summary here.
How many projects did they bring to Ohio?
They didn't say specifically, they worked with them for a long time. I asked them for successes and they kind of declined. I have email addresses and phone numbers of contacts, so we can kind of track that down, but
Well, it sounded like Ohio was one of their longer-term relationships.
it was, yeah, since
Yeah,
1986.
so I'd be curious to see.
And really, what their results isn't so much in the project, it's generating the leads. I mean, then it's up to us to kind of land the project, depending on who else, but.
But I'm sure they do a good job of tracking what
Yeah.
they can put their
Yeah.
name to.
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
The, thirdly, our Bridge to US Biz website is not, I wouldn't say it's a complete disaster. It looks nice, but it needs to be more integrated with our current website. And National Grid has a program with their cooperative business recruitment program, which again is another one-to-one match. And we're gonna be applying to that to get that website updated.
Get our call.
So, right now, the proposal is a 6-month trial? Is that what
Yes.
the big picture is?
That is,
6 months?
that's exactly the case. We figured, this stuff is very costly. And we figured that 6 months was the minimum that we could, kind of gauge response to the program. Of course, we've been kicking it around. I mean, can we do a year? Because a year is more of a, it might take a couple of months to gear up. But they feel, and again, I've been so pleased to work with these folks. They feel that they can gauge, they've been doing this long enough. They can gauge the reaction to people, to see how well of a fit they'll be, and really the success. So okay, what's the minimum that we can do, that we can sign a contract for, where we not at the end of the year, we've got 3 decent leads, and we feel like we haven't gotten a good return on our investment. They said 6 months we'll know. We'll know, how this is working, and to continue. I hope that we're starting a relationship that lasts years with this, but that's kind of the thoughts on the 6 months.
So we could decide then to drop it all together, continue on as we're going, or to continue on but redirect our target in terms of who we're identifying for companies, so.
I would ask the board to think back to a time when we began focusing on what appeared to be the community's strengths. And the 2 areas that we are really beginning to focus on now, because we believe we can play to those strengths, is agricultural products that have been value added, taking the commodity, add value to it. We think that there's opportunities there. The second is alternative energies, that we, without going into great detail, we believe those 2 areas have a significant amount of potential for development for the community. So we're not going to turn down General Motors if they decide to locate here, but we certainly want to focus some resources, at least for a while, until we determine whether or not we're on the right track. In our view, we have to do that in order to have some reasonable potential for success. So that's, and Dave and Marshall and Jay spending a lot of time developing this as a part of that overstructure of how we're gonna do this. And we're learning, so we'll see. You wanna send it through? If I may jump around here,
Please do.
Marsh, if you wouldn't mind, just, we'll take a second
Sure.
and then they can get some questions in. As you know, speaking of alternative energies, we've been working with two companies. Good morning, Michelle, how are you? Michelle, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Hi, good morning, good morning. Let me do a quick preamble and then we'll introduce you. How's that?
That sounds great.
Okay, great. On the phone with us this morning is Michelle Eisenhower. As I started to say, we are working with two companies relative to the New York Prize applications, which Jefferson County received two of them. You've heard reports from John Bay recently about activities from Edico. The other that we're working with is a company called Booz Allen Hamilton, and they are working on the eastern side of the county in and around the village of Carthage. And I asked Michelle this morning to hop on the phone here and give us kind of an update on what's going on in that area so that we can keep abreast of all the changes. So Michelle, without further ado, Michelle is the lead associate in this project. It's Michelle Eisenhower. She represents Booz Allen Hamilton. And Michelle, thank you for getting up early in the morning and giving us a little summary today.
No worries. Thanks for having me. So my background is that I've been with Booz Allen about 8 years, and I do the portfolio management for our New York Prize effort, of which Booz Allen has 17 across the state of New York. So Carthage benefits from that because we've had some trial and error with other utilities and with NYSERDA, and we bring all of those lessons learned forward to Carthage. In Carthage, we have a microgrid footprint that we are currently drafting the first 2 of 5 deliverables, which are the engineering, layout, proposed preliminary design deliverables associated with the project and the New York Prize process here. And we have identified a few facilities, predominantly the Augustinian Academy and the municipal building, down Mechanic to State Street to include some of the residential facilities and the health facility there. That's our predominant footprint. The reason that we selected that footprint was because it has a nice balance of residential, critical facilities, the health center, and that's something that NYSERDA is really looking for. We did extensive research to see if it would be viable to include the existing generation assets in Carthage, such as the hydro facility and the existing CHP, and unfortunately, the way that National Grid's infrastructure is structured is that those facilities are on a separate feeder that would have to be electrically connected to the feeder that these loads are on. And that at this juncture is cost prohibitive, but it is written into our report that we did do that research, and perhaps with further discussion with National Grid, something else might be viable in the future. What we're proposing as far as generation assets as a result of the inability to connect the existing generation is a 120 kilowatt solar facility, a solar array that we would put in the municipal lot across the street. Would not take the whole lot. When we were down and we toured Carthage, we looked over there, and it would only take a portion of that parking lot, so there would still remain parking across the street from the municipal building and police department, as well as a natural gas reciprocating generator because of that need for baseload power and NYSERDA's preference for natural gas over diesel. That essentially is a kind of like a storage storage or a shipping container size, and we propose to put that on the Augustinian campus in a small parcel that they have on the outside of their building. So again, not an obtrusive footprint for them, allows for that base load generation in the case that you have an outage when that solar array is not producing as much power, or any power if it is in fact covered in snow and or ice. So we like to have that base load power. So as we conclude the first two tasks, which again are those engineering documents, we'll be sending those to NYSERDA for review, after which we will be working on the kind of conceptual business model and the cost-benefit analysis. Part of the cost-benefit analysis with NYSERDA is that we send a worksheet to their third-party company, IEC, who runs all of the 83 projects through NYSERDA's financial model, and they're the ones that establish the cost-benefit analysis, which becomes part of our project deliverables. So we'll be sending that to them this week, the worksheet that they need to get started in order to do the cost-benefit analysis, and we expect a 2 to 3 week turnaround from them on that. The challenges around the project are just unfortunately the cost of power in national grid territory in your area is very low, so that makes it hard to get some of the returns that you'd see in the New York City or the Westchester County type areas where they pay much more for power, and thus you're offsetting higher costs. So, and again, while we would love to be able to connect those big generation assets at this time, given the electrical infrastructure, that's not possible without absolutely kind of devastating the economics of the project. So with that is the very high level Reader's Digest version of what we're looking at in Carthage, and I welcome any questions that y'all might have that I can answer this morning.
Michelle, may I do just a little bit of background for the board and see if you would respond if I'm way out of whack or whatever, but what's precipitating this New York Prize activity that we're deeply involved in is the notion that New York State's grid infrastructure is in bad shape. And the estimated cost for upgrading that infrastructure is somewhere perhaps in excess of $50 billion, and that's 50 billion with a B. And so the governor, in concert with the legislature, has a program called REV, which is the revitalization of the energy vision in New York. And what they've decided to try to do is to use a series of microcosms where they generate and distribute, rather than the long lines of generation and distribution we face now. New York State, particularly this area, is called an opportunity zone, which means, it sounds wonderful, but an opportunity zone is really a zone described by National Grid as one of having some serious flaws in its infrastructure. So the approach then is to try to find ways to put microgrids scattered around the state, around the community. I think there are, Michelle, something like that, 82 communities who have won New York's prize applications. And what they're trying to do is to obviate what is an upcoming expense. And who has to pay for that $50 billion? It's the ratepayers, which means all of us will be impacted by attempting to try to redo an existing infrastructure. So as a backdrop, this effort that's underway is an alternative to that $50 billion investment. It's not saying they aren't going to invest some, but they won't have to invest quite as much or nearly as much because it takes the stress off the system by using these. The other issue is one having to do with security. More and more of our companies are very concerned about having one single source of energy because a terrorist attack or a natural occurrence, some kind of a serious snow event, ice event, whatever, interrupts their power and makes it very, very difficult for them to continue operations. So this answers a number of issues, and our response thus far from participants in this program has been significant. We're getting some very, very good reactions, and we have a number of companies already committed to be a part of this. So, Michelle, did I overstate or understate anything there?
No, spot on.
Yeah.
Excellent description.
And I think
Yeah.
what's interesting too is that the Carthage study does kind of highlight this whole infrastructure challenge, because we entered this thinking, boy, they've got the hydro facility that's owned by the local development corporation, they've got the cogen plant, there's 2 smaller hydro facilities there, you know, the Carthage Paperboard has their own hydro facility. Boy, there's all this generation, you can really create this whole island within Carthage and West Carthage, but as Michelle and her team has found out, the way the infrastructure is, you really can't get it to that core area with the way the infrastructure is. It kind of goes into the grid, but you can't get it to do the, you could, but it's that cost prohibitive factor.
And unfortunately, you all are in good company across the state with that very fact. We've seen quite a few towns and communities that have generation assets, and we absolutely can't include them because they're too far away, and microgrids under NYSERDA's definition really need to be kind of within a half-mile radius at most, or electrically, even if they appear quite close, are in fact on separate feeders that might need to be at different voltages, and what that essentially means is you have to add additional infrastructure to step up and down the voltages to match. So this is something I think that NYSERDA was certainly surprised to see is as common of a challenge across the portfolio as it is.
Michelle, I'm a firm believer, and you may disagree, that NYSERDA and the governor recognized that there were going to be significant speed bumps for us to deploy this type of infrastructure. And I think part of the effort of the New York Prize was to determine what those impediments are. And it's not only physical, it has to do with rate structures, it has to do with tariffs, it has to do with activities insofar as National Grid is concerned. There are a significant number of these issues that we're currently dealing with that have to be sorted out before we can actually deploy this stuff. Fair to say?
Yes, I concur. We've identified quite a few areas where policy changes through the PSC might help alleviate some of the restrictions to facilitate executing microgrids across the state, as well as, again, challenges we've had with utility infrastructure, areas where they would have to take steps on the utility side to really facilitate the execution of these, etc. So I do think that they expected a lot of challenges, and now we're learning exactly what those are and what would need to be done in order to facilitate not only microgrids, but the development of additional distributed energy resources across the state and within these communities, enhanced energy efficiency projects and programs as well.
Michelle, and to answer this this observation or comment on it, 50 years ago, did we not have many microgrid systems throughout New York State? In essence, aren't we 50 years later going back to follow the example that we more or less have destroyed the last 50 years?
Well,
Shouldn't say destroyed, but.
I mean, I guess in some sense, yes, but while they might have been electrically small footprints, they certainly weren't connected at the controls level that a microgrid is nowadays. And that's where you see a lot of the irrecoverable costs associated with these projects. You need to have a control center in order to ensure that you're being taken off the grid. And so all of this technology, that portion of it is new. And that's the portion of the deal that you have to kind of ensure that the distributed energy resources can generate enough revenue to cover. So yeah, there were smaller electrical footprints, but the difference between the initial smaller footprints and now, you know, that we've gone to larger footprints and we're shrinking them back down, we're also adding a lot of technical control capability on the back end to ensure that you don't lose power switching between two systems, and that they don't, in fact, if you're islanding in your footprint, that the neighbor to that footprint also has power, and you're not impacting that neighbor despite the fact that you might be islanding within that feeder system. So yes, to a certain extent I agree with you, but to another extent there's a lot of technology nowadays that goes into these to make them, to facilitate the actual logistics and operations of them.
Michelle, perhaps a bad analogy, but 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when computers really started to take off in our workplace, we used the big mainframe and a bunch of dumb terminals reported to the mainframe. But today, we now find that our desktops have as much computing power as the old mainframes, and we work on the cloud or some other type of network. So,
Yes, it's that need for the cloud, exactly.
yep,
And that kind of back-end cloud concept is the change.
yep.
In terms of the infrastructure though, isn't this still just kind of a Band-Aid unless these people are severing from the grid?
I don't know if you heard the question, Michelle, but John is asking, are these islands really going to be effective? Can they sever from the grid? What is the impact if they do? You want to talk about that?
Sure. So they can, in fact, and depending on where it is in your feeder system, and at this juncture, as I said, we're wrapping up that engineering portion, so I can't opine at this very moment as to where you are in the feeder. But if you're at the end of the line, for example, going into island mode will not impact the other people in the general region, the general geography within your area. So you can take it into island mode for economic reasons, but you can also take it into island mode, of course, in the event of an outage or an emergency. If you're in the middle of a feeder and the rest of the power system has gone down anyways, you certainly want to put it the microgrid in island mode, and yes, it will in fact function. Those facilities will have all the generation that they need in these proposed generation assets to be fully operational and serve the community. So it does include some of those housing facilities, but it also includes the school, which we could use for any sheltering purposes you may need. You'll have your police department, your municipal building, the court, as well as that health center. In the event of an outage, the lights will be on, service will be there. So
The proposals, John, that we're kind of working on, I think, and help me, Michelle, make sure I'm, again, saying this right, it's, we will provide the capability for islanding, but most of the plan is not to necessarily sever from the grid, to stay at least reasonably connected to it. But by providing alternative generation, we can manage the cost, manage the distribution of that energy. So if we use, let's say, a solar voltaic array, and the guy next to him uses a turbine, gas-fired turbine generator, we can shift that energy amongst the players within these grids. And so if it's forced to, for whatever reason, if they want to isolate from the grid or forced to when the grid goes down, these types of energy will fit into the system, which is what Michelle's talking about. We now will have the ability, because of technology, to manage all these distribution assets within these microgrids. And let's say Car Freshener needs it and North American Tapes needs it. We can manage the assets within that to provide the energy that any of the participants need at any given time, whether it's coming from the grid or whether it's coming from our own internal generation. Is that?
Well, I understand that. My point was, if the governor thinks he's avoiding the upgrade of the infrastructure with this microgrid, I think he's being misled, That infrastructure still has to, that investment, long-term, still needs to happen,
I think it's
a
more than
cost
that.
deferral. Yeah, so what they're saying is it's a cost deferral as opposed to obviating the need for the cost ever. It allows it to happen in stages. So yes, you have a point, but by doing these, you don't need such long distance transmission. That those lines will last longer. That infrastructure will last longer. Substations that need very costly upgrades that can't be afforded right now, which is again more the case in the New York City area, but those costs can be deferred, and when the money is put into that substation, the substation itself won't have as much power flowing through it because a lot of that power is going to start being generated more locally. So So when you do those upgrades, actually the infrastructure should last longer because there's not so much long distance transmission of power when you're starting to generate more locally. But you are correct in saying that it is more of a cost deferral than to totally negate that the cost will ever need to be incurred.
Another thought I would have is if you're looking at the solar panel, aren't they good for like 20 years? So if you
Yeah, you usually get about 25
then you
to 30
update your
depending.
substation for the reduced amount of electrical at that time because your microgrids are on and they're running, but 20 years from now, they go by the wayside, or you gotta upgrade that system, but because you don't have enough substation to provide power direct, you know.
What
That's why it kinda gets to be a sticky wicket, I think, here.
Well, and you're right, John, there is a life to any of these things. Michelle says, we think now the photovoltaic arrays are 25 to 30 years perhaps, and maybe that's, as technology marches on, maybe that's too long. But what you do is you build in replacement costs into the cost of operating these microgrids so that the participants know that they are essentially building for the future, that, there's a small portion of their respective bills, this is my simple explanation, which will go to equipment upgrades at some point in time. So you depreciate this equipment over time and you build in a way to replace that. Because if you put a CHP unit in or some other type of unit, sooner or later you have to replace that. It's a piece of equipment. Not only that, technology marches on, so we think maybe the life of it's 25 years now, and we discover that technology produces a much better solar voltaic capture rate in a new technology. You got to move with that because your efficiency's improved. So clearly, to your point, there are a lot of issues that we need to resolve, and we're working on those. One of those, Michelle, not to get too far into this, but let's assume we put a partnership together with participants in a microgrid. What happens if one of those participants leaves? Let's assume you got 6 or 8 people in a partnership, and they're funding this microgrid. What happens if one of those leaves? Well, we're working with Green Bank, and Michelle knows about this, to have them be able to provide infill if that should happen, until we're able to restore it back to its full number. So, in addition to the physical issues, like how do we get under Route 81, for example, in one case, what is the right-of-ways, who owns the right-of-ways, who owns the infrastructure? All of this stuff is being, worked on as we speak. And I don't want to overstate this, Michelle, I don't know what you found, but we found we are actually beginning to move some of these issues forward and overcome some of them. Not all of them yet, but some of them.
Yes, and part of the reason that we selected the facilities we did, is to avoid having a vacancy in your system. It's very unlikely at this juncture, the academy, municipal building, the health center, have the better chances of being long-term, reliable customers. And then with the building complexes, you may have vacancies in the apartments or vacancies in the commercial facilities, but overall, unless that whole building goes defunct, you should be dealing with a pretty reliable, ongoing customer within your microgrid footprint. So,
Another driver here.
Also being considered in the design.
Another driver here we need to remember is that it was what happened with Hurricane Sandy. So the idea when you have a natural disaster, that at least that's why why all these proposals, when the grants were submitted, required the inclusion of some kind of critical facilities, so that if there was a natural disaster, there's a place where people can go for shelter to get basic services and things like that. So, so if the big grid gets shut down, you hopefully have these little islands where people can go for assistance and emergency services.
I kind of look at it like if it's a 12-spoke wheel, projects like this can be accounted to maybe 3 or 4 spokes on the wheel. It's not going to solve the problem. And I look at the emergency disaster situation. It's even this system is going to be suspect for solving that issue should the time come, because it's tied to. It's still got to be switched through control centers. So, but
there's automation that does that. So nowadays, all of that is automatically automated, and the control center would be proposed to be on the grounds of the municipal building, and it would all be automated. And there's, I think, a gap when the system goes down, so if National Grid's power goes down within this community. The electrical system has programming that will tell it to wait about 20 seconds to make sure that it's not just a little brown out of power. And then the system will go into island mode, and the generators, which will be continually running, and the solar panels, which will be continually providing power, will then switch to just this particular footprint. And so you'll have that instantaneously, within a minute. It will all be operating, the lights will go back on within this footprint.
So that control center will be localized.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to
part of the bill.
centralized.
Yeah. At one point, they called these smart grids, Michelle, for that very reason, that they were managed by automation, basically. For example, every one of the participants of these will have smart meters in their facilities, so these meters can be then monitored remotely, so we'll know exactly what kind of energy consumption they are having, when is it consumed, because peak demand problems we have up here, if we're looking at electricity costs, they're expensive at peak demand, and our industries, for example, typically operate during peak demand periods, therefore they're typically paying a higher rate. So if we can drive down those costs in some way by managing this, we're gonna present a better bottom line for our manufacturers. That, at the end of the day, what's driving all this is we want to create or retain jobs here in the community. What's driving it from our point of view. So we think this will be a vehicle that'll help us do it. But that said, this is what we're doing. We're learning as we go. Any other questions for Michelle? Michelle, I really appreciate the good efforts of who's Alan Hamilton and you personally, and we look forward to some upgrades as we go on, and good luck with your phase 2 and 3 reports and all that to NYSERDA.
Sure. We'll be making significant amount of progress over the next 4 to 6 weeks. So if you all are having another board meeting and would like another update around that time frame, please let me know.
That'd be outstanding. We appreciate it, Michelle.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I just wanted to give you a sense of what they're doing. We are, from the organization's point of view, the Antico effort is well ahead of Booz Allen, largely because we started that before the New York Prize came out, as you know, the board. So we were a year or two ahead of the rest of the state in this, and so we're well underway with that. We've already submitted phase 3 information to NYSERDA. Most of the others have not. We'll be meeting NYSERDA people in Albany on the 19th, and we're progressing extremely well. There's several projects in the wind that I can't really speak about now because they're in the very early formative stages, but we're pretty excited about what this can do for our community. So.
Very good. Any other questions for Marshall?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could kind of return to that. a
I'm
little
sorry,
bit.
forgive me for doing that.
No, I know you had that appointed call. So can you give us a timeline on this, or just in a nutshell, the goals and objectives? I mean, I think I have a sense of it, but if you could just repeat it and
Sure.
clarify it.
Well, the goals, the timeline, we're looking to get started with them hopefully by the end of this month. At that point, we'll have the grant into National Grid. We'll have the participation worked out with Lewis County. As I said, that's a little bit up in the air. Yes, they're excited about the prospects. It just, again, it depends on what they're able to contribute. Joe.
We only talked to them earlier at the beginning of this week, so they haven't had much time to get back.
Well, I didn't mean to get too deep into the weeds on that end. I'm talking about the 30,000-foot level.
Yes, the 30,000-foot level, we're looking at minimum, as it says in the executive summary, 25 real leads. These aren't leads like, they'll take a phone call, which is, we get that kind of thing sometimes. These are leads with people, with companies that have documented plans plans to expand into the United States as part of their future plans. You know, this is something that, you know, as we mentioned before, we're really excited about it. We're excited about it from an agriculture standpoint and agriculture processing. We're excited about it from manufacturing, the possibilities that exist there, and the synergies with our local companies. And really, as I mentioned before, this company that we're hoping to work with seems like it's a really good fit for us. You know, they're not a large firm, you know, as like a ROI or a Gruber Phillips is. They've had success. They're very well respected in the industry, and you know, we're excited about the prospects.
So basically, they're like a representative.
Yeah.
They're gonna represent our region, you know, Jefferson and St. Lawrence County.
Jefferson Lewis.
Jefferson
Yeah,
Lewis,
yeah,
yep.
yeah.
On a global basis, specifically targeting, in this particular instance, Western Europe, as I understand.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so they'll go to trade shows and make personal contacts with companies, you know, that are looking at expanding and promote our area as a place to consider. It's a lot more cost effective than us trying to go and make cold calls to these companies. They've got contacts, they do this, they know how to make the introductions and do the sales, so it's a little more cost effective than us trying to go and dig up companies on our own to make contact with.
And here again, Don, you know, you look across the global economy and you say, what holds the greatest potential for this community? And in our view, this region of the world holds more opportunity because we already have relationships with, for example, some of the German companies who we can then use as referrals to other German companies. As opposed to China, for example, that is having their own issues with their own economy, and you know, the question is, what is our relationship with that area? And it's not, we aren't trying to focus on China as well. We have several conversations going on relative to that area, but again, it's a question of what seems to be most productive for us. Jay, you wanted to make a, no, he's been itching to make a comment.
With this type of effort, what we're looking at is probably a 3 to 5 year return. Those contacts that we make, it's gonna take about 3 years before we see the results of actual companies located. Hopefully we can be that successful. The real advantage to this is that face-to-face contact that Mr. and Mrs. Agnew are going to have on our behalf over in Europe at these trade shows and such. They'll be our face to get the process started. I'll give you an example of what I think potentially can happen. In Massachusetts, Eastern Massachusetts, there was a yogurt company called Skier that just located there. They're an Icelandic yogurt company, and they just landed in Eastern Massachusetts. Though we're missing those opportunities because we don't have people out there representing our area. We see it along the thruway. There's good representation for the counties and areas along the thruway. But you come north of the thruway, we're left out a lot of the time, especially in agriculture. No matter how much we try to recruit, there's more effort focused on the thruway in western New York than there is here in the North Country. So I think this is going to give us a real opportunity to put our name, our face on the map with European companies. Hopefully we can be successful in recruiting somebody here, especially I'd love to see a dairy processor here because that would have a huge impact on our area. You know, I just think it's an effort that's been a long time coming. The other thing I just want to add is when I was on my own over on the other side of town, couldn't do this. You know, didn't have the resources myself to make this happen through the Ag Development Corporation. It's been how you have restructured how we operate that is making this successful, and I'm very excited and appreciative for that. We've got a great team here with Marshall and Dave, and you know, it's making this possible, and I believe we have a great opportunity for success in agriculture, and hopefully beyond agriculture, but obviously I love agriculture, so.
So if I could use a term, you know, maybe out of the 80s, essentially these people have the Rolodex,
Yes.
Yeah.
and that's what we need access to.
That's exactly.
Joe Russo, when we were first talking to him about this, and we said, okay, we got these German companies. Well, if you want to go German, you have to have the Agnes, and they're the people, as I mentioned before, she is German, and one of the key things here, yes, all of Western Europe is a part of their program, but, you know, specifically, you know, Germany makes a lot of sense for us.
And I think I want to be very careful with the board not to raise too many expectations with this. We're gonna give it our best shot. We think it has a reasonable chance of success, for all the reasons we've already just identified. But I will tell you, there's no guarantees with any of this, but we have to make the effort. In my view, we have to reach out to try to do our best.
As Michelle says, we're still in New York State.
Well, New York State, right now, we're still number 49 in business friendly. And the thing that's troubling a lot of our manufacturers right now, a lot of our employers right now, is the potential for $15 an hour wage. If that minimum wage happens, you're going to see some major negative impacts.
I think
And
you see the state legislature already picking up on that and understanding that.
I see that there's an effort to blunt that a little bit, thank God, because this is not New York City. This is a different economy up here.
I
And
talked to
they-
a company yesterday, said if it goes up, we're probably gonna move out of New York.
And we've had that comment from several right now. So I don't know whether it's a threat or a reality, but nonetheless, it's causing people to say, holy moly, if it goes to $15 an hour, we're gonna lose jobs, period, the end.
Well, I can say all you have to do is drive down Arsenal Street now and see that parking lot over at Convergys.
Mhm.
And anybody that says that the work that our organization does and pilots, you know, and a pilot doesn't have to be a tax break, they're paying full taxes, it's just the fact that they know what they have to pay. And when you take a place like that, that was vacant when we started, that has 900 to 1,000 people working there now.
It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And, you know, minimum wage jumps could really hurt them too.
And Jay made a good point, and needs to be underscored, in my opinion, that these things do not happen overnight. All of these seeds that you plant in the ground take a while before you know whether they're gonna grow or not, frankly. As my grandfather used to say, if you want something, if you want a good crop, you plant it in fertile ground. Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create the ground in which we can plant these ideas. So it'll take a while no matter what we do. So.
I can make one more quick point. You all have the executive summary. I would really appreciate any thoughts, questions, concerns, anything. You know, it's in draft form now, but you know, this is part of the application for Grid's program there. So please, you know, look through it, and we'd love some feedback.
I'll give you a quick one. The opportunity I see with this is not necessarily us developing a value-added product to export to Germany or Western Europe, but they have technologies and innovative things going on in manufacturing that could be a fit for taking our raw product here, getting it to our value-added markets here in this country.
That's exactly.
That's what it
Yeah,
is. It's
that's what
not,
we're
it's
talking
not
about.
developing an export.
No.
market.
It's getting them here to invest and do it.
Right.
You know, they may be looking to hit this market.
Right.
And you've got a lot of manufacturing is growing, has done pretty well in Germany. You've got a lot of companies there that they're kind of maxed out there, and in Europe, they're looking to expand. Well, where are they gonna expand? The United States and Canada.
That's exactly our thought.
Yeah.
So,
And, you know, another possibility, you know, you look at some of this, you know, the agricultural technology, robotic milkers, stuff like that, some of that's European technology, so maybe you get them to move here, manufacture it here, so it's closer to the product, I mean, to the market, where they can test it in the field.
The other thing I would encourage you to do, going over there to do that, is take that same effort and look within this country at the value-added side of it. And the fastest growing value-added side of it, really, I'm sorry, right now, dairy is organic. So what if they bring this technology, or here's this technology, whether it's for yogurts, butters, or whatever, even a new and innovative product in dairy, who knows what it is.
Yep.
But marrying that with the organic players in this country, and excess manufacturing capability we have right now, we have vacant plants, manufacturing plants, to rejuvenate those, coupling their technology with the organic markets here, those organic players that are actually in manufacturing right now in this country, start bringing them into the loop, because we're the Northeast market. We can actually move milk from the Midwest to here, process that, manufacture with it, and it makes perfect sense. It doesn't have to be produced here locally, but it makes perfect sense because you moved it to the market.
Yep.
Versus manufacturing in the Midwest and then still trucking it all to the market.
Yep.
So,
I've already started encouraging the Drum Country program to look at dairy manufacturing much more closely than they had.
a butter plant right now, I think, is
Yeah.
a small scale butter plant could be a good fit. Yeah. But here again, grabbing the European technology, marrying it with that in upstate New York.
Yep. I mean, we have the biggest organic market in the world, New York City, and I mean, yes, the second biggest is in San Francisco, but I mean, that is where all of the, that's where all the margin is too.
That'll be
Very
exciting.
good. Thanks, Marshall.
Thank you.
John, anything else for JCLDC? Motion to adjourn.
So,
Second?